Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10 and support the channel at the same time. It is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to the first Friday of HasCon. As you can imagine, there's already been some big announcements. You can see from the title screen here, we're going to be looking at Vraska. She was revealed at the event this morning. There's been a number of Iconic Masters cards revealed already, too. We're going to do follow-up videos throughout the weekend talking about Iconic Masters. I'll give you a little preview, though, in case you missed the news. Cards like Mana Drain, Horizon Canopy, yeah, a lot of big things to talk about. But for this video, we're going to focus on Ixalan, and we got some good cards to look at here as well. Now, quickly before we get started, if you check out the description below, you'll find a couple ways to support us, one of which is Amazon links. If you make any purchases from Amazon, once you go through any of our links, it really could be anything, a small percentage will come back to help us out. Secondly, you'll find our Patreon page linked below, and then finally, there's also a link to Flipside Gaming, and they provided a promo code for our viewers. With that being said, let's get into the cards. This one comes to us from a Chinese traditional language preview, loosely translated as Conqueror Battle, a white and 2 Vampire Soldier 2/2. When this enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a card named Conqueror Battle, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle. So it kind of has that Squadron Hawk ability. It's a little bit of a different card, though. It doesn't have flying. It's a 2/2 for 3, so it's going to feel a little bit different, but same idea in some ways. Now, when I first saw this card, what I thought about was the Monument decks in Standard, because those decks actually started off pretty strong when the meta was new, and they're not losing a lot of components as we move over to the new meta. So maybe you add this in there. This could work really well with a Ketra's Monument. I'd like to actually try that out. This maybe could be in a standard vampire deck, but I'm not sold yet that standard vampires is going to be a thing. I need to see more cards to really feel confident in that. And even if it is, no guarantee this card makes the build either. But definitely for the Monument decks, I think it will see play there. Aside from that, this is an interesting limited card. Like, this could be good in drafts if you can pick up a lot of copies of it, right? Like, you don't want to run one of this. 2 is okay, but not great. 3's pretty good. 4 is great. 5's awesome, right? So if you're drafting and you're trying to pick these up at common, try to go deep, try to get as many as you can, and you will be rewarded for it. Now, you might be fighting with someone else at the table, so try to read the packs, be careful of that, but if you can get a number of these with some vampire-based buffs and stuff like that, you could have a nice draft deck on your hand. Sealed, it could be a little bit awkward. I would not play this with less than 3 probably, maybe some pools if they're weak 2, but I really want 3. I think 3 is the sweet spot for you in sealed, and you have to be pretty lucky to open 3 of these, even if they are at common. So be careful with this one. Don't get pulled in. A lot of times there's better things you can be doing than running 2 of these. There's definitely better things you can be doing than running 1 of them. So avoid that trap at all costs. And I mean, finally, last thing I'll say is don't play this in Commander. It's just not very good there. Lookout's Dispersal. A blue and 2, instant uncommon. This costs 1 less to cast if you control a pirate. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 4. Now this one I do think will see standard play. I'm a little more confident that pirates can get there more so than vampires, at least from what I've seen so far. Maybe a Grixis pirate deck. And if that's the case, that deck will run this. This is a nice counterspell for a deck like that. It's basically a souped up mana leak if you happen to have a pirate. If you don't, it's not the end of the world. Like 3 is still fine for this spell, and it's going to keep some things off the table and defend you a little bit in that deck. Yeah, sometimes these type of spells peter out later in the game, but if you watch for the right moment, you can still surprise somebody with these every once in a while, especially if you have a pirate in play and you're using this for 2 mana. Beyond that, this is still good for you in limited. It could be a decent pickup in a draft, or if you happen to open it in sealed. Again, it's a good card with pirates, but it's not a bad card if you don't have pirates either. Alright, the next one is a transform card. Search for Canta, which turns into Canta the Sunken Ruin. This one's a rare. It's a blue and 1, legendary enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may put it into your graveyard. Then, if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you may transform, so keep that in mind. Sometimes that'll be relevant. Becomes a legendary land. Tap for blue mana, or pay a blue and 2 and tap. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them, put it into your hand, put the rest on the bottom in any order. Now, raw power level wise, when I look at this card, it doesn't feel as strong as some of the other transform cards we've seen this week, but I do feel like this is great for a control build. A control deck would want to play something like this, and actually it could be good there. Good enough even to see standard play, assuming that control still can hang out in the meta, which I think it will. Now, First thing with this card is that front side moves a little bit slow, but a control deck is going to help populate the graveyard with some instants and sorceries and such. Hopefully a few card draw or card selection spells, maybe early in the game, that type of thing. It's going to get you closer to that threshold where you can turn the card. Once you turn it, this is a great utility. It does still tap for mana if you need it, so that's nice. But beyond that, at the end of your opponent's turn, if you still have your mana and you didn't need to do anything, then you just go ahead and activate this, and it allows you to keep searching for more removal spells and more counter spells just to keep giving you gas. And I think that's actually really good for control. So I do think this will see standard play. I'd even want to test this out in some modern, maybe Azorius control decks or something like that. Don't know if it could quite get there, but I feel like it's pretty strong. It is slightly annoying that it's legendary, but still, you can at least transform the card and then play a second one if you needed to, and at least you get some benefit out of it at some point. But aside from that, limited, it might be a little awkward, just because typically your decks in Sealed and Draft are going to be very creature heavy. This isn't really interested in creatures. It's more interested in, of course, non-creature, non-land cards. So because of that, most of the time you're going to pass on this one. I mean, every once in a while you draft that deck that is more concentrated with non-creature spells. And if that's the case, then maybe you run this, but I don't think it's going to happen very often. Finally, I will say another good card for Commander, because as the game goes along, you're going to have a lot of opportunity to turn this card, and also you could be digging for some really powerful spells. Stormfleet Spy, a blue and 2 human pirate. It's uncommon. It's a 2/2 with raid. When this enters the battlefield, if you attacked with a creature this turn, draw a card. Decent card for draft and for sealed. Maybe a middle of the pack pickup or something like that in a draft. Not too much to say about it. If you are being aggressive and you can attack pretty consistently, then getting a 2/2 and drawing a card is pretty good for 3 mana. It's a little awkward if you can't attack and you're on your back foot or something like that. You don't necessarily want to play a 2/2 for 3, but I think the potential upside is good enough that a lot of times you'll run it. It's also a pirate, so that will definitely come into play a lot of times, especially in draft. This next one came from HasCon, so it's a little distorted, but Bishop of the Bloodstained, 2 black and 3, Vampire Cleric, uncommon 3/3. When this enters the battlefield, target opponent loses 1 life for each vampire you control. So it's kind of interesting. I don't really see it crossing over into standard. Even if the vampire deck can get there, this is really awkward if you're behind. Maybe you're coming off a board sweep or something like that. You don't want a 3/3 for 5 that's going to do 1 point of damage basically to an opponent. That's not the market you're in the world of standard. So I don't see it doing a lot there. But aside from that, I think, again, fantastic draft card, fantastic commander card. If you want to go all in on commander tribal, I think this could be actually pretty good to take a big chunk of damage out of at least one of your opponents, which is kind of nice. It would have been nicer, I guess, if it did something to all opponents, but I'll take it for what it's worth. Aside from that, though, like I said, I'm drafting heavy vampires. I'll play this in a draft deck. Sealed, maybe, maybe not. Just depends on how many vampires I have. There's a certain point where it's just not worth it. You don't want to be playing a 3/3 for 5. You want to make sure you're going to at least be able to do a few points of damage to your opponent when this enters the battlefield. Next, we have Lurking Chupacabra. This costs a black and 3, beast horror, uncommon 2/3. Whenever a creature you control explores, target creature an opponent controls gets -2/-2 until end of turn. Not really a card designed for standard. It's just too contingent upon what's going on around it for it to be good enough there. It's just too inconsistent. But in some limited games, it's going to be good for you. It just depends on how many Explore triggers you have. If you have a fair amount of Explore triggers, maybe you drafted pretty heavy into that mechanic, then this is going to be a great card for you. You're going to be really happy to run it. A 2/3 for 4, not exciting on surface value, but that ability is good as long as you can consistently explore throughout the game. If you can't, then you might be passing on this one unless you're really desperate for a curve filler at the 4 spot, but you really want to get this ability. If you can consistently hit the triggers, though, the ability will be really good for you, whether you're playing draft or sealed. Probably a little better in draft when you can orchestrate the picks a little better, obviously, than sealed where you have to deal with what you actually open. Dinosaur Stampede, a red and 2 instant uncommon attacking creatures, get +2/+0 until end of turn. Dinosaurs you control gain trample until end of turn. So we see this type of card pretty much in every set. It's the +2/+0 instant attacking creature thing, and it's good in certain builds, typically, right? If you're going wide, it's great in those type of decks. You'll be happy to run it if you have some sort of small creature or token strategy. This set's a little different, though. This particular version of the card also throws in the fact that dinosaurs gain trample, so it makes it at least a little bit more of an incentive to pick it up if you're in the dinosaur build as well. And also, too, I don't think it's going to be bad for vampires or for pirates, maybe even merfolk. So This card actually probably has a higher utility than it would have normally had in other sets because of the tribal elements and also because of the dinosaur amendment that's tacked onto it. So I do think this is actually a pretty decent draft pick, maybe a little bit higher than these cards would normally go for. Rampaging Ferocidon. I like this one a lot. This one's a red and 2 Dinosaur Rare 3/3 with Menace. Oh, and players can't gain life. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, this will deal 1 damage to that creature's controller. Now, a few things about this card right off the bat. 3/3 for a red and 2. That is very rare. That is rarefied air there. You don't see that all the time. Oh, and tack on the Menace on top of it. So this thing is going to be a beater. It can get in early for some damage, and that's awesome. Players can't gain life. Gaining life is a great sideboard strategy against a lot of red decks, especially if you're being aggressive, or you're running some burn or something like that, and you can quickly run out of gas. Well, opponents will go ahead and put in some life gain, and that life gain will keep them alive and let them get their feet under them, and they can basically come back and run over you. This shuts off that opportunity. Finally, that last part can be maybe a little controversial. Like, you have to think of it this way. Yes, there's going to be certain circumstances where you might be playing more creatures than your opponent. Let's say you're playing a dinosaur deck, they're playing a control deck. You're going to be taking more damage in this than probably they will. But the idea behind this really is for you to be able to outrun a lot of matchups. Think of cards like Ixalan, for example, right? Like, the reason those work are because, yes, you're taking damage from it too, but your opponent takes a little bit of damage and you're just outrunning your opponent. You're just outracing them. So think of it this way. If I was in a heavy dinosaur build, yeah, I'm going to be taking some damage. I'm putting dinosaurs down. I'm making 3/3 dinosaur tokens with trample. But if I'm taking a point of damage from my 3/3 dinosaur token with trample, I'm hoping my opponent's at least taking 2 or 3 from that particular token, if not more, right? That's the idea behind this card, and it doesn't mean it can't be successful. You just have to balance and think about it, and think about your plays a little more, and think about your deck build a little more. With that being said, I don't know if the best place for this will be a dinosaur deck, but maybe more of just a traditional aggro/burn style deck. I mean, Lightning Strike's back in the format, cut off that life gain, take some damage when you play your small creatures, but your opponent takes a little bit of damage off this card, but more, I guess, dire for your opponent is they're also facing down this 3/3 Menace every turn, or any other haste creatures you throw out there, and some lightning strikes, and eventually you just simply outrun them. And that's where I think this card can excel. With that being said, yes, this is standard playable. Maybe in a dinosaur deck, perhaps, but I do feel like I think we will see this at some point anyway in a more aggro, traditional aggro red deck. Maybe it's not right away, but at some point in its lifetime, I think that will certainly happen. Right now, Ramanap Red is pretty good. Your big question is, what would you take out of that deck to put this in? So that might get a little awkward, especially you're already upgrading things like Lightning Strike is definitely an upgrade to that deck. So does it need something like this? We'll kind of wait and see. I'm going to pass off the judgment on that until a little bit later and I see the rest of the set. But at least for right now, this will see standard play. This is a bomb and limited first pick draft. Great card for you. You'll be happy to play this. It will get some early damage across. Really cool card. I love the art on it too. Ryle. This one's a red sorcery, common. It will deal 1 damage to target creature you control, but that creature does gain trample and you draw a card. Yeah, it's okay for limited. It's not always going to make your cut. It does turn on Enrage 1 time, so maybe that's a thing you care about. If it is, maybe you run a 1 of, but this is a late draft pick. You can probably get this at the end of the pack, and if you really are desperate for a 23rd playable or really all in on some of your Enrage effects, then yeah, it will be playable in some builds. Next we have another card from HasCon, Merfolk Branchwalker, green and 1, Merfolk Scout. It's uncommon, it's a 2/1, it explores when it enters the battlefield. I like Explore. I think this is going to be a really good mechanic in Limited. Don't underestimate this. The fact that every once in a while the creature will get a little bigger, but when it doesn't, you get a little bit of selection off the top of your deck. It's almost like scrying, a little different, since it does populate the graveyard, but I think that's actually a great mechanic. And a card like this is going to be very good, maybe a good middle of the pack draft pickup for you. Alright, let's talk about Vraska, Relic Seeker. This one's pretty sweet. It's a green, a black, and 4 legendary planeswalker, Vraska, 6 loyalty, +2, create a 2/2 black pirate creature token with Menace, -3, destroy artifact, creature, or enchantment, create a colorless artifact treasure token, which of course will tap for a mana of any color if you sacrifice it, and then finally, -10, target player life total becomes 1. Wow, okay, it's a lot to take in. It costs 6. That's the first thing I want to address. 6 casting cost Planeswalkers. Yeah, you don't Grand Slam 4 of those in every deck, right? Like, you're going to have to be a little methodical in your deck building with a card like this. But 6 casting cost Planeswalkers do see standard play. They can do very well. We've seen things like Chandra Flamecaller. The 6 casting cost Sorin did pretty well for a short period of time. This one is also backed up by the fact that one of the colors is green, and green has some good ramp in this set, and actually some of the other sets that are in standard. Because of that, I think this will see standard play, and I think it might actually see a fair amount of standard play in different decks. It also defends itself really, really well. The +2 making a token to defend itself, not to mention the -3 that can deal with the problematic artifact, enchantment, or creature. That's actually pretty awesome. The -10's cool too if you can get there, but I think that goes without saying. Now, just generally, it's got a lot of loyalty. It's just hard to deal with when it comes into play. Your opponent's going to have to deal with this. They can't ignore it or they're going to lose the game. So they're going to have to start moving their resources towards taking this out, and that can be problematic with that +2 and that -3 ability. And they might just get stuck in a rut trying to play a game against Vraska and end up losing to you. And that's actually pretty sweet, right? So yes, it's 6, but I think it's doing enough and could be backed up with a little bit of ramp. The most successful decks running this will be backed up with ramp, I think. And if that's the case, yeah, this is going to be really, really sweet, even in standard. This is awesome for you in Commander. Imagine doing that -10 to somebody at the table. They probably won't be happy, but if you can pull it off, I mean, that's a huge play, right? Especially later in the game when you're down to your last few opponents. And yes, limited. First pick, slam it. You want this in your draft. This card is going to be a beast in sealed and in draft. All right, with that being said, those are the Ixalan cards for today. So I'm going to be doing a lot of videos, probably all weekend. I'm going to try to keep up with Iconic Masters and if there's any more Ixalan cards too. We're basically looking at 2 sets this weekend, and it's crazy. So I'm just going to keep making videos. And that's basically it. So if you're wondering where I am, what I'm doing, I'm making videos. Until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.